All right, welcome to the webinar. You might have to work with me as I'm trying to figure out the mechanics of Zoom. So I see all of you are trickling in. Exciting. Thank you for joining me today. I am in Philadelphia at a conference, so I'm live from my hotel room, as you can see. So I'll give participants, I hope you know how to work Zoom. If you have any questions, feel free to type them. And I shall begin very soon. Okay, so the title, as you see, is Staying Sharp in the Summer. And mostly having done this work with executive function, I have been, I have been able to work with a lot of parents and a lot of families, and they always ask me what kind of activities they can do so that they continue to promote their executive function. So with that in mind, my talk today is going to be about getting everybody to understand a little bit about executive function itself, and then how to relate that to summer. So let's get started. The first thing, that no school does not mean that parenting ends, as all of you know. And also, it should not mean that the brain is in the brain drain mode. So research gathered over 100 years shows that students score lower on standardized tests when they take the test at the end of the summer months as compared to when they take it and during the beginning of the summer months. And the question is, what really happens? And that is often described as brain drain, also referred to as a summer slide. Often summer slide kind of captures this idea that students or children, teens, young adolescents have stopped thinking and mostly stopped using their critical thinking the way they use in the educational context. And of course, this doesn't mean a person becomes dumb or stops having the capacity to think, but mainly it means that the person is not able to, the individual student is not thinking unless it's the student is challenged. And so the real question is, what kind of things really challenge the student to think about their thinking? So let's start with executive function. What is executive function? Those who know my work hear me talk often about executive function, and these are collective group of mental skills that help you manage your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors to achieve goal. But the most critical word here is for self. So it's the mental skills the student uses, the child uses, the kid uses to manage his own thoughts, manage his own feelings, manage his own behaviors. So that self is in the center of it, not how you manage, now how somebody else helps you manage, but how you manage it yourself. A quick example, I was at the airport, and before we took off, I went to the restroom, and there were many stalls, and a mom came in with a child, a 7-year-old who had two stuffed toys with her, and the mom, they both were about to enter the stall, but the mom grabbed those two stuffed toys, kept it on the ledge so that they could enter the bathroom stall. And the little girl was kind of in a panic mode. Don't take away my toys. I need them. These are my favorite ones, Mom. And the mom said, yes, nobody's going to take them, but we need to leave them outside. They're going to get dirty. And so this little encounter took almost 5 minutes for Mom to persuade the little girl to leave those two stuffed animals that she was carrying with her that she was planning to take on the plane. That's executive function. So if you feel anxious about leaving something, if you feel anxious not finding something, how do you calm yourself? how do you regroup, and how do you then manage your behaviors? All that is executive function. So take example of this little beach scenario. Executive function is everywhere. And so even getting to the beach, packing that little bag, what do you have in that bag? You have your sunscreen, you have a bottle of water, you have a book. But if you keep a cold bottle of water next to the book, the water bottle sweats and it can make the book wet. If you have your iPad, you can actually fire that iPad with the water. Or if you didn't charge your iPad or your phone because you wanted to listen to a book on the audiobook while you were laying down in the sun, you need to plan all these things. So executive function is figuring out goals and then directing effort and attention towards it. So in short, it's applying knowledge and adapt your knowledge in an adaptive way to regulate yourself. So this managing and applying your knowledge in an adaptive way is really at the heart of summer months, and how the learner, the young child, adolescent, or even teen manage these skill set. So it's the brain's executive function that allows you to bounce back, as I mentioned, but it also kind of teaches you how to impose structure. And one of the things I commonly hear from parents that I don't want to bog my kid down with too much structure and rigidity. I want my child to be let loose, have fun, don't feel that he is a little minion. And I get that, but it is a balancing act. And that's why this little seminar, to give you some insights about what that means to a parent as well as educator, as they are kind of advising. And there are a lot of, I hope the educators who I see you all are joining in, some of you, those who are educators, understand that in education, you may be tutoring some kids, or you may be leading a summer camp, and so you're still managing kids' behaviors, or you may be getting ready to get back to school and preparing some type of curriculum, and these are the things that one needs to keep in mind. So now, continuing with that conversation, as I was mentioning, back to this beach, the most important executive function is that future mindedness. So the night before before you get into bed, is your child looking up at the weather? Is the child saying, do I need a towel? If my brother and I both are going to be at the beach, how do we differentiate between our towels? Is there something that I need to spread in the sand? Do I need something to wipe myself with? Or do I need to carry my trucks or little sand tools? What do I need? So that requires future thought process. And the future, maybe you're on this beach vacation, for example, and you're going to be there for 5 days. Then what is the best time to go to do mini golf versus when is the good time to watch a movie? So doing a little bit of planning with your children is also executive function. So going to the next idea, so the most important thing that one needs to be really concerning themselves with is staying sharp in the summer, is really preparing the students always for transitions. And I like to describe 4 types of transitions. Not all kids are prepared or made equal. There are some kids who are really good at this and some are not. And then there are some adults who are good at this and some adults who are not. But there are 4 types of transitions that relate to executive function. And the first and the predictably easiest transition, as you can imagine, is leisure to leisure transition. I'm watching Netflix, then I'm going to move on to my DVR stuff on HBO. That's leisure to leisure. I'm playing one video game, I finished that, and I'm going to start another one. So this is a very easy transition, no worries, no stress. The second one is work to leisure transition. And of course, you just finished work and now you're transitioning to leisure. Let's say you took some calls while you're on the beach, your kids are already on the beach, and now you are yourself getting ready to go to the beach. That's a work to leisure transition. The third kind is, of course, the uh, leisure to work transition, and that gets a little bit sticky. And I'm going to describe this concept of stickiness in the context of executive function. So research describes there's something called affective coloring. And affective coloring is a psychological phenomenon where we take one idea, one encounter, one experience, and the experience we have in that encounter colors the experience we are going to have in the next encounter. So let's say you are in a meeting and somebody says something not so cool, not so flattering, and then right after that you are going to celebrate your girlfriend's 40th birthday, and you are sitting and having drinks and you're still carrying that little comment somebody made, and that's called affective coloring. And the reason transitions are really critical is because in these transitions we really find our stickiness put to test, and we are really struggling in this way, kind of not having the best way to adjust our mood, adjust our attitude, adjust our actions, even adjust our thought process. We tend to get a little bit boxed in because of the affective coloring. We tend to get a little bit rigid. We tend to get a little bit annoyed, and we are likely to stay annoyed if we get into this mode. So the third transition, as I mentioned, that a leisure to work transition is what is really hard. Entire transition from summer to a school is that leisure to work transition. And then the last transition is my favorite, because that's where I do a lot of my training. My executive function training is kind of really equipping students and learners of all kinds to transition from one type of work to another type of work. So I hope this is making sense. If you have any questions, please type away. I'm still navigating how to figure out transitioning from a presenter mode to listening to your questions. I'm going to give you a number. If you want to text me, you can do that too on my phone, which is 404-493-0962. So give me a second and I'm going to look up if all right. Okay, so that's that. Coming back to the next idea then, how do we really understand the summer engagement? And so summer is fun, but how do we take this time and really understand this process of preparing to let the children be at their personal best in their executive processes, be ready for school even though they're not in school, and continue the kind of summer activities that the teachers have recommended, such as summer reading or some participation, or maybe you're a buddy for a new student in school and you need to make a plan to meet with that student. All those things are becoming summer ready using your executive function. So now let's talk a little bit about that process of actual strategies, and how do we bring those strategies to daily life. So here they are. Another comment I want to make about executive function and parents' executive function. Parents who are managing children, parents or adults who are managing other people are required to really finesse their skills and abilities because they are in charge of other people, and they are supposed to have the goals in mind. They are supposed to have activities in mind, and they are supposed to have the big picture in mind. And sometimes, particularly you as parents are taking care of sick family member, or you're the one in charge of all the travel, or you're the parent who's working in taking care of children. Your executive function may be stretched to the limit, and in that case, you may be exhausted by the time you're put in front of that child you're taking care of, or those who, like me, are parents of college students, and your adult children have moved in. They're not doing laundry. They are hanging out in their room on their devices, and they want to keep their doors closed, and they don't want you to walk in. They want you to leave their food ready in the kitchen, or sometimes even outside their door. I hope you're not doing that. And how do we manage that? And my message to you all is to really, we are not perfecting life here. We are not trying to kind of have some type of like a principle of pristine living. We are just saying, this is my reality. I have one kid who doesn't like to go out, and I have one kid who is a social butterfly who likes to have like 15 kids for a sleepover. And so your job is to kind of balance that while you are balancing your own executive processes, and particularly exhaustion. So here's my first suggestions. Be active. So I think this is kind of a no-brainer, as you can imagine. So make sure your children's summer is filled with summer activities that are physically engaging. Playing basketball, playing hoops, playing, going outdoors, maybe running. If you are a runner, taking your kid, having a little Fitbit competition in the household is really, really important. Those who are joining in and those who understand this idea of comorbidity, if you have children with executive function challenges that you're helping or raising or teaching, there's 30 to 40% comorbidity of depression, anxiety disorders, stress disorders. And what does that mean? That that really the brain is not producing the chemical that allows you to engage. And one of the natural chemicals that we can replace is through physical activity. So physical activity is really, really important. Those who do long hours of work, or their children like to are gamers, thinking a little bit something like walking treadmill, walking desk will be really helpful as well. Have a workout plan, or have a instructor come home, or join a boot camp and take your, particularly this boot camp is a great idea for your teen, and having some inspiration to your mom or dad may not be the most inspirational members of that boot camp, but having a fit trainer can be a great asset to a teen who likes to work out, but is bored to work out because none of the friends are in town, or they're not sure they can work out in such a hot summer. Another thing to think about is just the neuroscience of it. Children really need that 60 minutes of physical activity each day, particularly the aerobic activity where the heart rate is increased and the muscles are strengthened, and that's something Center for Disease Control and Prevention kind of talks about. I think we have a lot of options, so don't limit your physical activity to gym, but you can think about yoga and Pilates. Zumba classes are fabulous. You have horseback riding, hiking, or even a spin class can be great. My gym where I go to have an option to add on a member just for 6 weeks or a few weeks. I have guest passes that I give to my young adult children that I mentioned about. And also I have take my children to my Pilates class, my favorite Pilates instructor, and my kids who have never done Pilates kind of find it, and I have 2 boys, so they certainly don't know or like Pilates, but now ever since we've been doing this together, they have found some classes on their own as well. Now, a local swimming pool, if you have a pool, and particularly if you have a pool, but may not have the way to do laps, kind of having some creative ways to kind of, grouping or kind of joining with some other moms and creating like, you open your pool and I'll bring the snacks for the kids, and then do a little community party. Having something as a joint activity can be a great way that you keep your children engaged. One message you will hear me consistently talk about is you cannot really make this for children. If you are doing this for yourself, and then your children can do it with you. And of course, I'm not saying you do everything I'm recommending here, but there can be few things that you are really the one who is modeling this for your children. And I think then a local Y can be a phenomenal resource for all of us. My children, when they're younger, that's the pool that we always went to. When we had friends and family visit, we went to the local Y for a fun activity as well. We had birthday parties there, which was always a hit, which you already know. The other part to think about is exploring the outdoors. So this is really not about the hiking itself, which I mentioned earlier. Being active is going on hikes, but exploring outside you can take it up a notch. When my kids were younger, we did letters of alphabet. So the way we did it, for example, whenever we took hikes, the children had to spot letters of their spelling. So when the kids were a little younger, of course, my son Kunal, Kunal, these are a little bit hard letters to spot. But are you seeing a tree branch? Are you seeing a rock? Are you seeing a puddle in a shape of, or taking a stick and then drawing letters? And so my kids eventually became very clever in spotting. And then we created a little alphabet a scrapbook. And so we had cloud shapes in it. We had sticks, we had branches. We even had animals, or if people were gathered, we kind of took pictures of the crowd. If we were by the riverbank next to where I live, and if you took a picture and they could connect them with a pen, we printed those pictures. And so that can be something, exploring the outdoors. You can also take like a great executive project process is gardening and growing plants. And now we have something called vertical gardening. I'm so proud of my older kid who lives in New York, and he and his roommates, mostly his roommates, who are very inspiring partners. So they have an entire wall of vertical garden in their apartment, which is a very tiny apartment, but they have all managed to do that. The love for that began when he was younger, when we did a lot of gardening. Again, these are aspirational things. When I mention these things, I used to do some of them some year really well, and then others not so well. But I have seen tremendous benefit in a project management skill that comes through when you're working on gardening or developing a vertical garden or things like that. I'm at the ISTE conference right now, which is a technology conference, and I came across so many apps, and so there are apps that you can actually download that will allow you to take pictures of insects or creatures in the wilderness, and it will give you information. National Geographic has an amazing tool that you can, if you subscribe to National Geographic, you can get a lot of lessons about the nature that you can follow. So there are lots of things you can do with your children about exploring the outside. And then, I don't know about you, but I grew up in India. We didn't have any fancy apps and gadgetry, but I did, my favorite activity was taking flowers and pressing them. And leaves and pressing them and pressing them long enough that you can begin to see the veins of the plants and the trees, the leaves rather, and also the flowers. And when it came time, the summer activity, we would bring those things in classrooms. And when we did art projects, we would use these pressed things. Now, I have noticed that you can actually go to a store and buy pressed leaves and pressed flowers. What a shame. Anyways, going back to the next idea is imagine being bored. Really, the neuroscience of that is really very strong. This process, so in the brain, there are two systems. One system is called default mode network, when the entire brain kind of hangs loose, and during this phase, a lot of creativity is something that is promoted, provoked. And then there's a task-specific network when you are actually intensely focused on completing tasks. And it's a natural phenomenon that we wax and wane, or we move in and out of these two networks, and we are sometimes highly attentive to important tasks, and then we daydream. So the daydreaming state is really the state when you begin to make a lot of connections. And I feel a highly wired environment that we are living in and our children are growing up, they may not be actually allowed to be bored. For example, a lot of parents who come bring their second child with them, and these children are waiting in the waiting room while I have the parent come and observe me as I'm working with their older or younger sibling. The kid in the waiting room wants something so that he is not bored, or the parents are quick to hand a tablet or an iPad so that the child is not bored. The assumption there is if you are bored, you actually will create trouble or you will be trouble. And I just don't believe that. I think boredom is literally staring into nothingness and having an opportunity. So sitting by the riverbank or sitting in your backyard and just watching and doing nothing, not looking to escape or learn something. And this temptation that we all have, let me show you what I just saw through your Google or through your own device, is a way to really not allowing yourself to be bored. I, in fact, was reading some research about the number of people who take their gadgetry to the toilet. Is a really high number, and just a little self-check and see if you are doing that yourself or not. But why? Why are we feeling the compulsion to see something or check something? And that's primarily because we don't believe that we have the time to actually chill a little bit and waste any time. So that's really the thought about boredom. Really, maybe sitting together, listening to music, or sitting together and maybe just hanging out without speaking can be a great activity. Just kind of explaining to your children, can you do that? This reminds me of a great researcher. I think it was I'm not sure, Luria or Vygotsky. He was a Russian psychologist, but asked the children to sit still. And the children could not sit still more than 5 seconds. But then he asked the children to pretend that they were guards and watching this castle. And their job was to not let anybody out. And the only way to make sure to do that, to be still in the night, so nobody can hear that they are being the guards. And the minute this psychologist gave students this opportunity to visualize and conceptualize this idea of being still, the children's ability to sit still or stand still increased by 100-fold. Why? Because you are now giving them an anchoring point so that they can imagine the value of such a skill set. And a lot of guests on my podcast who talk about mindfulness really talk about this. I will be launching soon a podcast with a wonderful guest, Dr. Christopher Willard, who studies mindfulness and teaches mindfulness. And he has lots of these ideas to get children to engage in mindful meditation, which is by kind of learning to quieten the mind and quieten the body and sit still and pay attention to your breath. So a precursor to allowing yourself to be bored is to kind of really pay attention to your body in space in a still way. Read. I don't need to tell any of you. You probably are avid followers of this little message. But research does show there's a decline in reading, particularly as kids are getting more connected to technology. Reading is one of the most brightest and best tool you have to sink into deep crevices of imagination. It is the best tool we have for time travel, and it is the best tool you have to build a very complex and essential executive skill called theory of mind. Theory of mind is the ability that allows you to imagine other people's thoughts, feelings, and ideas and belief systems. And it allows you this ability to compare other people's thoughts, feelings, ideas, and perspectives with yours and see if they match or they don't match. And if they don't match, then that's the tool we use to shift our perspective and think from other people's point of view. And so reading is the only tool that will allow you to do that. And great authors are the ones who are opening the window into the future through these amazing books. I will, in the show notes, list my favorite books for children that I feel are really, really a great a tool that you can form partnership. I hope if you have children who are younger than 6th grade, you are reading to your children out loud, taking turns in bed every day. If you have children who are older, I hope you are discussing books with them. And if you have really more so junior and older college kids, I hope you're sharing with your children. My children and I, we share a lot of articles. We talk about, it's funny, my younger son sent me 2 articles, and one of them was from a New Yorker author who talks about boredom, how to officially get bored. And he sent me that article, and I was traveling and I didn't have a chance and I didn't respond. And he texted me back, "What's up? You haven't said anything about this." So if I say to him, "It was really good," he doesn't let me fly anymore. He will say, "Tell me what you liked about it." And I said, "Wait a minute, are you my parent now?" But we have created a culture in the household where discussions are a very essential element of how we connect with each other and share our ideas and beliefs. And what is adding to that perspective, that I don't need to really have a belief system. I am using a wonderful author and using his belief system to check in with my sons and my husband and my family. What do you think? Recently, I just finished reading a book called Working. It's a phenomenal book. I recommend to those who love to get into the heads of authors who write about their writing process. It's a very meta book, but this author talked about writing biographies and how he actually moved into the town where his main character was from, and this idea about studying somebody's habits can be a great study for the summer. This is the only time we really get to think about how people do what they do. Biography is a really important genre of books that I recommend that you encourage your children to do. When my kids were younger, we did all the artists. There used to be a great illustrated books on all the artists, Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo, and then we moved into greatest leaders of the world, and then we got into the most celebrated thinkers. And then as my children grew up, we actually got their biographies. And then eventually got autobiographies. And the nice continuum of that was, for example, we read Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin is my favorite person who we as a family have studied because he was a prolific author. As you know, he has written a lot of books, and there are a lot of biographies on Walter Isaacson's biography is my favorite one. But when my kids were younger, we read, they have done a lot of book reports on them, but eventually we completed the whole cycle by reading like 800-page biography together as a family. So reading, I cannot stress enough how reading can really build skills that are transition skills. These are the skills that will allow you to transition. The next one is try something new together. So the key word here is together. I think parents are very quick to sign up kids for workshops and seminars and or summer training, a summer program, but they themselves don't do it. And again, I am not really talking about helping your children build resilience. I'm really talking about you getting a chance to model your resilience for your children. And what does modeling mean? Modeling literally means I do this way, watch me do it, show me how you do it. Wow, I got a chance to watch you. When you do these processes, you're really modeling executive function, and you're promoting skills that are going to last beyond summer. So there's a great talk by my favorite neurobiologist that I heard, who talks about the window for novelty. So the window of novelty is a very short window during which we explore new things, and after which we stop trying to explore. So apparently, window for tattoos is very narrow. It ends around age 21. Window for music or music genres or exploration and really getting stuck in a certain type of genre ends by around 2024. What's so interesting is if you actually are more than 40, you will find that you are not really taking great interest in your children's bands that they like, children's interest in music, and you probably don't even share, particularly if they're like rap and you're not the one who likes rap. You're not going to pick it up as a habit or a skill because the biology of this adventure says that those windows kind of close. Window for trying food is also very limited. So one of the best ways research says to challenge or expand that window is to kind of keep pressing and expanding by introducing new ideas. So one of the things that I find that if you can create a little travel through the globe kind of adventure for the family and try every food that's possible that your neighborhood allows you to explore, or in your travel, certainly explore different foods. One of my friends was just telling me yesterday that her son is traveling to China. He just graduated from high school and he's traveling to China, and their family is avid meat eaters, and they eat everything. But this kid is going to China, and he said, I'm going to explore eating all kinds of creatures, including even maybe snakes and dogs. And of course, the parents, who were both very pro-exploration, kind of freaked out, and they said, I'm not sure if I can handle dogs. So anyways, the idea is, what makes you want to be adventurous when you try something? This idea, it really is kind of jumping into something that you're unfamiliar with. And what kind of things do you jump into? So doing something, learning to do something together is not just eating together necessarily, but you can do something like we have never painted together. Why don't we take up painting a wall? Let's figure out DIY a project. Go to local Home Depot and get all the instructions. They actually offer a lot of workshops for the newbies, and you can learn a little bit about how about caulking the wall, or and then painting, and how many layers you need. The idea there is experiential learning is the best teacher for adaptive process, and those experiences cannot be only student directed, child directed. They have to be you and the child directed. And when you are engaging, it will challenge your own executive function. One of my favorite things to do is cooking together. So trying to cook a new recipe, teaching kids how to try new recipes, and then maybe taking a cooking class together. A lot of community colleges offer cooking class. And what is the essence of cooking and executive function? It is planning, organizing, thinking ahead, projecting into the future, kind of following steps, and innovating or adapting. If you are missing an ingredient, replacing it with something. If you don't have a heart-shaped pan, replacing it with a round-shaped pan. Those are really calling for executive function proficiency. So it's a great idea to do that. Then just kind of a note, screens are not evil. Screens without monitoring how the screens are impacting your mind and body and soul can be evil. So real skill is to teach kids to become responsible. As I mentioned to you earlier, the very definition of executive function is using mental sets to manage your intentions, your goals, and your emotions. And so if you feel your screen is the sole source of your emotional experience, or moving away from your screen is causing a little bit of a crisis, then yes, that can be then a skill that you need to develop and practice. So a few things to think about is kind of following, as I mentioned earlier, National Geographic, Animal Planet, Discovery Channel. I recently came across, which is another thing that I'll add in as a resource for you all, is a teacher who has this little adventure that he posts a video and asks you to guess where he is, and in 5 questions. So it's a 20-question version, but it's an adventure. So he'll give you 5 clues and you have to guess. So he says, I'm in a national forest, and guess now which national forest I am in. So what you're doing is you're exploring the world with your children together. Also, if you can actually think about a lot of apps and kind of games that can engage, and you're doing it together. And lastly, the most important thing, ways you can really connect your kids and yourself to the screen, is watching things together, watching a sitcom together, asking questions about what part did you like, watching a movie together, what did you think about the director. I like to, when my kids were younger, one of our favorite shows was Psych. And one of the funniest, craziest element in Psych was, in entire episode, they would always hide a little pineapple. And so my kids were not only, it was a murder mystery show, and the main lead pretended to have, Sean was his name, he would pretend to have psychic powers, but he really didn't have psychic powers. He had great ability to actually observe. And so as Sean observed, we would pause and kind of become psychic ourselves, and we would say, what did he see? Oh my God, he's about to make a breakthrough in the mystery. What is it? What is he noticing that we are not noticing? And then the second thing we would do together was to kind of spot the pineapple. And that became our fun, adventurous show that we watched together. Again, the idea is that when it's done as an experience is, as you, those who know the research in happiness talks about, is the greatest tool that brings a long-lasting contentment. So such experiences where you are present and you are engaged and you are having as much fun. And by the way, do not underestimate the power of letting your children see how much fun you are having. You laughing out loud can be amazing. You getting scared. I actually have gone to see horror movies, which is fundamentally against my grain. And seeing me hide behind my purse has been the most fun thing about the horror movie for my children. I've taken my kids and their friends, and they in fact have warned their friends that, watch my mom. Watch how she gets scared. So why torture myself? Because I wanted my kids to know that I'm willing to jump into the adventure, even though I hate it. I cannot stand. I was the queen of roller coasters, and then by the time my kids became teens, I became a little bit horrified by height, and I would find it very, very difficult to ride the roller coasters, but we did it together. Just kind of saying to you, that ties in with my next idea, that we want our kids your kids are there, who are going through all kinds of experiences, and part of their experiences are leading to help them make those connections in their brain, and those connections are invisible. And one of the best ways to make those connections visible is to engage with them, and that engagement comes from listening to them. If your kids are not happy about their experience, if your kids are a little bit tentative or not so excited about school is about to start, if your kids are not happy about the teacher who's assigned to their class next year, or they are not even happy about the book they're supposed to read, kind of listen to their fear, listen to their worry, and see what is it that gets them down. What seems to be concerning them so much that they are consumed by it. And that listening, actually, without advice, can be the greatest tool that is a very tool that will allow them or empower them to unhook their thought process, reduce their affective coloring, which I was talking about earlier, and give them the optimism that it's going to be okay. But without listening, a lot of times we as parents are so quick to offer advice or support or really a solution, that we believe that we really don't have what it takes for them to figure this out for themselves. So listening can be a greatest asset. Getting to the last two ideas, and then I do want to invite you to ask me questions, but build connections and connect to communities. Lots and lots of research. I am about to interview a wonderful, world-renowned, highly celebrated researcher. Her name is Sunia Lothar, and she researches children who are being raised with affluence, and the challenges they are experiencing, or the rate of suicide and rate of depression is very high in those communities as well. And she was talking about one of the best ways, a remedy, or what's missing in these children's lives is community and community engagement. And so I like to say to parents, instead of sending your children to Ecuador on a mission or getting your children involved in some charities, make sure that you and your children do something charitable together. My sons and I, we would do delivering Meals on Wheels. I would be the driver, and we would actually drive through the local Atlanta community delivering meals. And that way you get to see families who have a disabled person in the house, families, the parts of rural Atlanta, the urban Atlanta that we would drive in. My children had never visited. There was no reason to do that. Those kinds of things, and being involved in your local church, but you being with them is a really important part, because there's nothing gratifying and satisfying to see that your parents have the same belief system that they want you to have as a child, and you are kind of demonstrating that, you're emulating that for your children. And so the last part I will say is diary. So no executive function training or talk or discussion is complete unless we talk about writing. Writing is the highest form of executive function after cooking, if I may say so myself. And entire academic curriculum is centered around writing. And one of the biggest slump that children get into is their writing. And particularly here, I have a recommendation to keep writing and a picture of a girl. I do not want to insinuate that boys should not be journaling. And those who enjoy moth stories or haven't heard of, I highly recommend to listen to Moth podcast and maybe listen to with your kids. But they have a whole section devoted to people bringing their diaries and getting in front of the microphone and sharing their teenage angst. These are their teenage diaries, and they have written about all the things that they were feeling at that time, and the kinds of things they were doing. And as they look back, they have great compassion to this little young one who are going through such hard time, which only time tells that things are not going to stay that way forever. But writing, maintaining writing skills is really, really critical. Again, five paragraph structure is a really important writing tool that you can incorporate, which is how to write a thesis sentence, how to write a conclusion sentence. And I'm not suggesting that it's parents' job, but the teachers have done that job throughout the year, and it's your job to make sure that the students your children have inculcated that, and actually they have the ability to infuse that. If you have college students, if you have kids who are getting ready, they're in high school, and someday, if not right away, if they are getting ready to write about college essays. College essays is not something you write your fall semester of your junior year or senior year. Writing a college essay, every single prompt is going to ask you to describe a moment that changed your life. And one of the things that I find that, including my kids, have not thought a lot about what are those moments in my life that have changed my life. And so journaling is a way to gather those moments that actually have some sort of influence on you. Let's say maybe you took a trip to India and you saw something there, you write about it. Or maybe you took a road trip and you saw your car broke down and you saw that who stopped for you and how people helped you. That can be your life-altering experience. But journaling and writing, your mind is very raw when you have just had that experience, and capturing that experience is really critical when you write it right away. There are lots of software and lots of apps that will allow you to journal. You do not need to edit your children's writing. Please do not do that. Do not tell your kids to edit their writing. Journal, keeping a diary really is emotional dump, and allowing your kids to have that experience of where they say a few things about what they're thinking and feeling can be a great idea. If your kids are younger in elementary school, do a video diary. That seems to be a wonderful, wonderful tool. As I mentioned to you, I'm in a technology conference, and I saw lots of tools and gadgetry that the teachers are using to get the children to do reflection. My own software, ExQ, I have built into a reflection through video through video recording and summarizing experiences through video recording. Why? Because I fundamentally believe that ability to reflect is an art. That is also a skill that allows you to take a distance from self and take a look at yourself in a compassionate way, but from a third-person perspective. And particularly imagine if you kept a video diary over the summer, and then you look back the last week of summer before you go back to school, you sit down with your kids and you watch those video diaries, and you can have a hearty laugh, and the kids will say, no, I did not say that. We did a lot of video montage when my kids were younger. They didn't do video diary as much as I did a lot of video interviews of my children. And one of the activities we would do is to watch them together. And that would be a lot of fun as well. So in summary, what am I trying to say to you all? Train your brain. We all have one brain, and that one brain has incredible capacity to function beautifully and help yourself to get stronger. The student who knows his brain is the most empowered one. The student who understands how he or she thinks is the most empowered. The student who doesn't think that there's only work that happens during school life and no work happens when I'm in summer is not thinking right about his brain. So it's our job to help our kids to connect with their brains and take charge of them. So the question we must ask, is my brain governing my life, or is my life governed by my brain? And I think when you empower your children to understand that we are that family who is very awake and able and quite ready to kind of engage, we kind of take our brain head on, and we leave nothing to last minute, and we don't leave anything unturned. So I hope this was very helpful. I would love to open it up for questions. I am going to check out if I know how to look for questions. I am not seeing any questions, so let me see if anybody can text me. Text me if you have any questions. And going back to this, as you text me a question, if you have any, and you guys have to forgive me, but because this is a new little tool for me, I'm figuring this out. But meanwhile, here's some information about me. My email is right here. You can email me if you want to learn a little bit more about my software that trains executive function. Please look it up on my website, and that website is myexq.com. And again, I see there's a question, so that's great. So the question says, thank you, Lisa, for a question. It says, what do you think about meditation as a summer strategy for kids and teens? Well, that's a fantastic question. And I would like to say why again, think about as a summer strategy. It should be a lifestyle. And yes, I highly encourage everyone to consider meditation as a family affair. My kids and I, my husband as well, we have been trained in three types of meditation practices. One is Isha Yoga. It's on isha.org, ISHA. They have amazing workshops, including a workshop called Inner Engineering. Second is called IAM, Integrated Mata Amritanandamayi Meditation. And that you can find on the website Embracing the World. And the third one is TM, Transcendental Meditation. I find I recently came back from a Varela symposium in Santa Fe at the Upaya Zen Center. I'm an avid believer, but also a follower of meditation, mindfulness practices. And the neuroscience is unarguably incredible. We have a significant amount of data now that talks about the value and the most critical element of mindfulness practices and meditation practices seems to be in the area of attention control and impulse control. So certainly that seems to be the one, the area of the brain that allows you to kind of remove distractions and pay attention with great focus and diligence. That seems to be the area of the brain that seems to cast a great impact on attentional regulation and distractibility. Another thing to think about, which is such a silly thought, but when I finished, I did a training of children with dyslexia and ADHD, and after using my tool ExQ, and one of the children said to me, I said, "What did you learn?" And she said, "You know what I learned? I learned to breathe." And no teacher told me that I should breathe. And I was sharing that with a teacher, and it was funny to both of us that the kid almost thought that she needed a little nudge to remember to breathe. But what the idea there was that sometimes your attention and your emotional regulation can be done through your breathing. And breathing is the single most tool you have access to all day long. And that breathing deep and breathing with great attention to your breath really can help in improving your mental state. It can reduce anxiety, it can reduce your stress, but it also can help you connect with your big picture. So yes, thank you, Lisa. That was a great question. So here's what we're going to do. I think we are at the end of the webinar, and we have 2 minutes to spare. Thank you for tuning in. I am extremely excited to share these ideas with you, and you being present with you makes it all the more better. I hope I can really answer any questions you have. You have my email, and hopefully we can connect soon. I will be offering another webinar before the school year begins. So stay tuned. Thank you so much. All right.